You've realized you're the sole guest at your own birthday celebration. Everyone else was simply too polite to decline. The humiliation sears through you like acid, yet this pain brings a revelation that will alter everything. You've finally grasped that you outsourced your self-worth to people who never deserved that control over your life. Halt, breathe, feel this piercing truth slice through your consciousness like an icy blade. You know precisely what I'm referring to. You've checked your phone countless times today, longing for a message that validates your existence. This compulsive checking is a symptom of your terminal ailment. You've morphed into an emotional beggar disguised as a sociable individual, and beggars are never respected, merely tolerated out of pity. Each word you utter is a confession of weakness. Every instant reply to messages is a testament to desperate availability. Each appearance at gatherings where nobody genuinely desired your presence is a public display of your neediness. You offer assistance before it's even requested because you've cultivated a pathological addiction to feeling useful, and then you wonder why nobody appreciates you. The answer is brutally simple. You've become a free service available around the clock, and complimentary services are never respected. They're simply exploited until exhaustion. You feel that shame burning as you realize you were always the one who called first, who cared more, who needed more. That ache is your compass, guiding you toward the transformation to come. Yet, there's an even greater terror haunting your thoughts. What if your absence goes unnoticed? What if the silence reveals that you were never needed? This possibility terrifies you because deep down you know it's true, and that's precisely why you must confront it. Your constant presence has made you predictable. What is predictable loses all its power. You've become furniture in people's lives, always there, always available, always expected. They know exactly where to find you, how to manipulate you, and what reaction to anticipate from you. You've become as commonplace as breathing itself, essential when absent, invisible when present. While you postpone this transformation, others have already mastered the game. Each day you remain overly explanatory is a day your silent rivals gain ground in your own life. They observe your desperation masked as kindness. They calculate your predictability while you believe you're being spontaneous. They thrive on your weakness while you pride yourself on your goodness. Here's the truth nobody told you. Goodness without strength is vulnerability in disguise. Gentleness without boundaries is cowardice masked. Constant availability is desperation masquerading as generosity. To become visible, you must first accept being utterly invisible. To be heard, you must first choose eternal silence. This is the paradox few comprehend. You fear the only weapon that could save you because it demands that you die to be reborn. It requires you to coldly murder the needy version of yourself. While others clamor for attention, true power whispers. While others compulsively explain themselves, real authority simply acts and allows others to interpret. You've turned your life into a desperate monologue directed at an audience that has already left the theater. Continue speaking to empty seats if you wish to remain irrelevant forever. But when you vanish in silence, not out of anger, not out of resentment, but out of calculated strategic choice, something extraordinary occurs. People start searching for you. Those who ignored you when you were available suddenly discover your absence as if they realized they'd lost a vital organ. The human mind devours mysteries. You finally become one. Silence teaches you the cruelest truth about human relationships. People only value what they can lose. While you were there, available, explanatory, eager to please, you were as disposable as used paper. The instant you become inaccessible, you become essential. This is the ruthless mathematics of power. Scarcity creates value, abundance creates contempt. But beware, the silence of the weak is desperation in disguise. The silence of the strong is a calculated choice. Learn the difference, or your strategy will become just another pathetic escape. True silent power is not reactive. It's magnetic. It doesn't pursue, it's pursued. It doesn't explain. It's studied like a natural phenomenon. When you strategically vanish, you compel others to confront their own emotional reliance. They realize they needed your attention more than they ever acknowledged. They discover that your validation carried more weight than they recognized. In this agonizing realization, you achieve something that no words, no explanations, no pleas could ever accomplish. Genuine respect born from the fear of loss. Your absence becomes a more potent presence than your presence ever was. The entire world realigns when you cease begging for a place within it. You transition from being reactive to becoming a force of nature. You stop pursuing and become as inevitable as gravity. This journey isn't for the faint of heart. What you will uncover about yourself and others in the upcoming chapters will shatter many comforting illusions. You'll learn that you've constructed your entire identity upon sandy foundations, that you've invested your time, energy, and emotions in individuals who never warranted such devotion. But from this demolition will arise something infinitely more powerful, a version of yourself that doesn't need to ask permission to exist, a version that doesn't explain its decisions because it understands that explanations are confessions of insecurity, a version that masters silence as others master words. The silent disappearance is the demise of the needy ego and the genesis of true authority. You no longer need to prove your worth because it manifests in your very absence. You no longer need to vie for attention because it comes to you like water cascading down a mountain, inevitably, naturally, effortlessly. You're about to learn that real power never announces itself. It simply exists, like the tempest that destroys without warning, like the blade that cuts without a sound. When you master silence, you don't vanish. You become the phantom that haunts the memory of those who lost you, and phantoms never need to plead to be remembered. But you are not yet a phantom. You are an emotional zombie wandering among the living, yearning for a drop of recognition that never arrives. This thirst reveals the hidden predicament that is sapping your vitality. You have mistaken need for value. Observe your behavior over the past few months with the detachment of a surgeon examining a tumor. How often have you offered to resolve problems that weren't yours? How often have you accepted flimsy excuses as if they were gold coins? How often have you suppressed your own opinion to maintain the harmony of relationships that only persist because you fuel them with your energy? Each of these actions is a public admission that you don't deem yourself worthy enough to establish boundaries. You operate under the pathetic delusion that being indispensable will make you irreplaceable. But the truth is the opposite. The more indispensable you try to be, the more disposable you become. The hidden predicament isn't that people don't value you. The predicament is that you've transformed into a professional victim disguised as a savior. You've cultivated a chemical addiction to the drama of being overlooked, because this neglect fuels your internal narrative of an unappreciated martyr. You've become addicted to your own humiliation. Analyze this perverse dynamic. You lament not being valued, yet secretly revel in your excessive generosity. You bemoan that no one cares, but continue desperately trying to prove that you care more than anyone. You've created a system where your identity hinges on being the most needy in the group. This is the most subtle trap of the wounded ego. It convinces you that your weakness is actually a virtue, that your pathological need for approval is love for others, that your inability to say no is kindness, that your constant availability is loyalty. Lies. All lies that you tell yourself to avoid confronting the brutal reality of your situation. You've become an expert in one-sided relationships, always giving more than you receive, always caring more than you should, always investing more emotional energy than any return would justify. And when the imbalance becomes unbearable, instead of correcting the pattern, you seek out more people to repeat the same destructive cycle. This is your drug, the fantasy that one day someone will acknowledge your sacrifice and give you all the attention you've always craved. But that day never comes because you've chosen to attract precisely the type of person who feeds off the energy of others without ever reciprocating. You've become a magnet for emotional vampires because your neediness attracts them like blood attracts sharks. What you call bad luck in relationships is actually a pattern you've created and maintained yourself. You subconsciously seek out people who will validate your belief that you're not worthy enough. People who will toss you crumbs of attention to keep you begging for more. People who will make you feel fortunate for receiving the bare minimum that any human being deserves by right. You've cultivated an abnormal tolerance for disrespect. You accept behaviors that would send others into a fit of rage. You swallow humiliations that others would never stomach. You justify betrayals that others would never forgive. Why? Because your fear of abandonment outweighs your self-love. This excessive tolerance isn't compassion, it's cowardice disguised as wisdom. You've learned that it's easier to adapt to the toxic behavior of others than to demand the treatment you deserve. Easier to lower your standards than to find people who meet them. Easier to accept scraps than to seek the feast you should be devouring. The hidden issue that's destroying you is that you've outsourced your self-esteem to people who have neither the interest nor the capability to value you adequately. You've handed over control of your happiness to individuals who can barely manage their own lives. You've made strangers the arbiters of your worth. Every time you check your phone hoping for a message, you're confessing that your peace of mind hinges on someone else's action. Every time you offer to help when you haven't been asked, you're declaring that you need to make yourself useful in order to be accepted. Every time you accept a last-minute invitation, you're confirming that your schedule is less important than other people's convenience. You've built your identity on shifting sands. When others are pleased with you, you feel valuable. When they show indifference, you feel worthless. When they ignore you, you question your very existence. You've become an emotional thermometer, registering the temperature of other people's moods. This emotional dependency is more addictive than any drug because it offers an illusion of control. You believe that if you try harder, give more, are more understanding, you'll eventually earn the love you so desperately crave. But relationships based on one-sided effort aren't relationships. They're exhausting performances where you're the only actor on stage. The most pathetic part is that you've developed pride in your ability to love unconditionally. You feel morally superior to those who set boundaries, who say no, who prioritize their own needs. You've mistaken martyrdom for virtue, and that confusion is keeping you trapped in a cycle of perpetual humiliation. While you pride yourself on your generosity, others see you as weak. While While you swoon over your loyalty, others categorize you as predictable. While you celebrate your patience, others treat you like a doormat. The reality is harsh. Your imaginary virtues are obvious weaknesses to anyone with eyes to see. You've accepted crumbs for so long that you've forgotten the taste of a banquet. You've accepted excuses for so long that you've forgotten what it's like to be a priority. You've accepted indifference for so long that you've forgotten what it's like to be genuinely desired. Your reference point for a healthy relationship has been completely warped by your own neediness. The underlying problem that's weakening you isn't your kindness. It's your cowardice, masquerading as kindness. It's not your love for others. It's your fear of being alone. It's not your generosity. It's your desperate bargain for scraps of affection. You aren't a heart that's too big for this world. You're a person who's too frightened to demand what they deserve. A perfect target for social predators. They can smell your weakness from miles away, like wolves detecting the scent of blood in the air. Your frailties aren't secrets. They're glaring signs flashing in the darkness, attracting exactly the kind of person who specializes in exploiting your lack. Let's dissect, one by one, the vulnerabilities that have turned you into a walking victim. The first and most lethal. You answer messages instantly. This pathetic urgency to respond reveals that you have nothing more important to do than to be available to someone who barely remembers your existence. Every immediate response is a confession that you were waiting for that message, like a dog waits for its owner. People with real power make others wait, not out of arrogance, but because their lives have priorities that don't include being available to anyone who decides to interrupt them. When you respond right away, you're communicating that your life can be put on hold at any moment for other people's convenience. You've turned yourself into a customer service representative who works 24 hours a day for free. The second vulnerability that exposes you to predators. You never cancel plans, even when you don't want to go. Your inability to say no has turned you into a social puppet. People make plans counting on you because they know you'll never let them down. It's not loyalty, it's predictability. And predictability is the antithesis of power. Observe how this perverse dynamic operates. When someone invites you to something, you immediately cancel other arrangements or rearrange your schedule. But when you invite someone, you accept any excuse as if it were a valid justification. You've established a pattern where your needs are always secondary to the needs of others. Your third critical flaw. You compulsively explain yourself. Each decision you make is accompanied by a dissertation on your motives, as if you need the approval of others to validate your choices. People with real authority don't explain themselves. They simply act. When you explain yourself, you're retroactively asking for permission for your own decisions. This compulsion to explain your actions reveals that you don't trust your own judgment. You need external validation to feel secure in your choices. Each explanation is a confession of insecurity masquerading as transparency. You believe that by being honest about your reasons, people will understand you better. In reality, they respect you less. The fourth weakness that makes you vulnerable. You accept excuses that even you don't believe. When someone lets you down, you not only accept the excuse, you embellish it. You find justifications that even the person who disappointed you hadn't considered. You've become a lawyer specializing in defending those who harm you. This pathological need to justify the behavior of others is a defense mechanism against the painful reality that many people in your life simply don't care enough. It's easier to accept a comfortable lie than to confront a brutal truth. Easier to invent excuses for them than to admit that you're not a priority. Your fifth lethal flaw. You tolerate disrespect that would cause others to immediately sever ties. Constant lateness, last-minute cancellations, broken promises, forgotten commitments. You swallow it all with a forced smile and an extra dose of understanding. You've transformed into an emotional dumping ground where others dispose of their inconsistencies. This excessive tolerance isn't virtuous. It's systematic self-destruction. Each instance of disrespect that you accept establishes a new baseline of acceptable disrespect. You teach people how to treat you through what you allow, and you've been allowing everything. The sixth vulnerability that exposes you to predators. You offer help before you're even asked. This compulsive need to be helpful reveals a desperate strategy to create value where it doesn't naturally exist. You believe that by becoming indispensable, you'll become irreplaceable, but free services are devalued by definition. When you offer to help without being asked, you communicate two devastating things. First, that your time has no value as you're always available. Second, that you need to create artificial reasons for people to want your company. You've become a solution in search of a problem. Your seventh fatal weakness. You share your problems with people who can't even solve their own. This need for emotional validation leads you to expose your vulnerabilities to anyone who shows 5 minutes of interest. You mistake casual listeners for genuine confidants. Each personal problem that you share with the wrong person becomes a weapon that can be used against you. Information is power, and you're freely distributing the keys to your vulnerability. Strategic people guard their secrets like guards protect treasures. You hand them out like flyers on the street. The eighth weakness that makes you an easy target. You measure your worth by how much others need you. When someone comes to you with a problem, you feel important. When someone asks you for a favor, you feel valued. When someone unloads on you, you feel special. You've confused being used with being loved. This perverse dynamic turns you into a magnet for troubled individuals who need someone to clean up their emotional messes. You don't attract people who want your company, you attract people who need your services. The difference is profound. Your ninth devastating flaw: you're afraid of confrontations, so you'd rather swallow insults than face conflict. This aversion to conflict has turned you into a prime target for abusive personalities. They know they can disrespect you without consequences because you'll prioritize peace over your own dignity. Every confrontation you sidestep is a missed chance to establish boundaries. Each insult you swallow is an invitation for further disrespect. Every time you choose phony harmony over necessary truth, you signal that your dignity has a price and it's cheap. The 10th and most lethal weakness: you believe that love is suffering, that healthy relationships are rare, that you must accept crumbs because you don't deserve the feast. This limiting belief keeps you trapped in destructive patterns because you can't even fathom something better. You've normalized dysfunction. You've romanticized toxicity. You've turned neediness into a virtue. These warped beliefs aren't merely weaknesses, they're mental prisons you've built yourself, and of which you yourself hold the keys. Each of these frailties is a gateway that allows external and internal adversaries to ravage your life. They work in tandem, creating a perfect system of self-sabotage. Until you acknowledge and eradicate these vulnerabilities, you will remain easy prey for any predator who crosses your path. Now is the moment for the first rupture, to forever abandon your romantic delusions about how people truly operate and embrace the cold, calculated reality that governs all human interactions. Humans aren't driven by the goodness, justice, or altruistic love you imagine. They are fundamentally selfish creatures, motivated by self-interest, fear, and a lust for power. This isn't a cynical outlook, it's a scientific observation, and the faster you accept this truth, the sooner you'll cease being manipulated by it. All human behavior can be boiled down to two primal forces: the pursuit of pleasure or the avoidance of pain. When someone is kind to you, it isn't because you're special, it's because that kindness serves their interests in some way. When someone ignores you, it isn't because you're inadequate, it's because investing energy in you doesn't offer sufficient returns for them. This revelation devastates most people because it shatters the comforting fantasy that pure relationships exist based on genuine affection. But for you, this truth will be liberating because it will finally explain why your previous strategy failed so miserably. You believed that by being a good person, you would attract good people, that by being loyal, you would inspire loyalty, that by being generous, you would awaken gratitude. These naive beliefs turned you into a perpetual victim because they ignore the real mechanics of power dynamics. People don't respond to what you do, they respond to what you represent to them. It doesn't matter how kind you are if your kindness offers no perceived value. It doesn't matter how loyal you are if your loyalty is taken for granted. It doesn't matter how generous you are if your generosity is seen as desperate. Here is the first Machiavellian law of human relationships. People value what is difficult to obtain and despise what is readily accessible. Your constant availability doesn't demonstrate love. It demonstrates a lack of options. Your quickness to respond doesn't show interest. It reveals desperation. Your willingness to help doesn't betray generosity. It betrays a need to be accepted. The second law: people are constantly testing the boundaries you permit. Every minor disrespect you accept is a test to see how far they can go. Every broken promise you forgive is a lesson about how much they can abuse your tolerance. Every time you swallow an insult, you are teaching that you can be insulted without consequence. These tests aren't conscious, they're instinctive. People do this naturally, like animals establishing hierarchies through physical confrontations. When you fail these tests repeatedly, you are automatically ranked as subordinate in the social hierarchy. And subordinates aren't respected, they're exploited. The third Machiavellian law: people project their own limitations onto you. When someone treats you badly, they're revealing their own nature, not yours. When someone is incapable of loyalty, they assume you too will be disloyal at the first opportunity. When someone is driven solely by self-interest, they can't conceive that your motivations might be different. This projection is simultaneously your greatest vulnerability and your greatest opportunity. Vulnerability because people of questionable character will assume you are also questionable, treating you based on that assumption. Opportunity because you can use this tendency to manipulate others' perceptions of you. The fourth law: people mistake cause for effect when it comes to power. They believe powerful people are respected because they have power, when in reality they have power because they are respected. Respect comes first. Power is merely its outward manifestation, and respect is earned through specific behaviors that communicate value and scarcity. You reversed this equation. You tried to garner respect through availability when you should have earned respect through scarcity. You attempted to appear valuable by being helpful when you should have seemed valuable by being selective. You sought admiration through effort when you should have attained admiration through calculated indifference. The fifth Machiavellian law of relationships. People are naturally drawn to what they cannot completely control. Mystery breeds curiosity. Inaccessibility cultivates desire. Unpredictability generates fascination. You eliminated all of these elements by becoming completely transparent, utterly accessible, and absolutely predictable. When you remove the enigma from yourself through constant explanations, you also remove the intrigue. When you become entirely accessible through unwavering availability, you eliminate the thrill of the chase. When you become completely predictable through rigid patterns, you extinguish the element of surprise that keeps people engaged. The sixth law: people interpret emotional intensity as weakness, not as passion. When you demonstrate how deeply you care, they are not moved by the depth of your feelings. They are unnerved by your intensity. Emotional intensity communicates desperation, and desperation is naturally repellent. Powerful people are emotionally regulated. They feel deeply, but they don't allow their emotions to dictate their actions. They don't suppress feelings. They process them internally before choosing how to express them outwardly. This emotional regulation is interpreted as strength, composure, and maturity. The seventh Machiavellian law: people respect clear boundaries more than unlimited kindness. A firm no is more enticing than a desperate yes. Rejection based on standards is more respectable than acceptance based on neediness. Selectivity communicates self-worth in a way that indiscriminate generosity never could. When you establish clear limits, you're conveying that you value yourself enough to protect your time, energy, and peace of mind. When you accept any treatment, you are signaling that you don't believe you deserve better. People believe you when you demonstrate that you believe in yourself. The eighth law: people are more influenced by actions than by words, more impressed by consistency than by intensity. A sustained behavioral shift communicates genuine transformation. Emotional promises of change communicate only temporary emotional instability. Your tendency to explain your intentions instead of simply demonstrating them through consistent actions undermine your credibility. Words are cheap. Anyone can talk. Sustained actions require character, discipline, and genuine commitment. People have learned to disregard your words because your actions invariably contradict them. The ninth Machiavellian law: people are governed more by the fear of loss than by the desire for gain. They will work harder to avoid losing something they already have than to acquire something new. Your constant presence eliminated any fear of loss, transforming you into a guarantee that can be safely ignored. The tenth and most important law: people treat you exactly how you teach them to treat you. Every behavior you accept becomes the minimum acceptable standard. Every boundary you fail to establish becomes a permanent permission for disrespect. Every time you forgive without consequences, you are authorizing the repetition of the behavior. This Machiavellian understanding of human nature is not cruel, it's liberating, because it finally explains why your previous approach failed and provides the blueprint for an entirely new strategy. A strategy based on reality demands a complete overhaul of your identity, not superficial adjustments or temporary changes motivated by anger. A profound metamorphosis that will fundamentally alter how you think, act, and exist in the world. You must consciously kill who you were to give birth to who you need to become. The new you is not an improved version of the old. It's an entirely different creature. Where there was once neediness, now there is self-sufficiency. Where there was once emotional reactivity, now there is cold calculation. Where there was once a desperate need for approval, now there is genuine indifference to the opinions of others. Where there were once compulsive explanations, now there is potent silence. This novel archetype operates under entirely different principles. It doesn't strive to be loved, it seeks to be respected. It doesn't try to please, it endeavors to impress through competence. It doesn't offer availability, it offers scarce value. It doesn't pursue, it attracts. It doesn't explain, it demonstrates. It doesn't beg, it selects. The first hallmark of the new you is absolute rationality. Every decision is made based on logic, not on emotion. When someone disappoints you, you don't react with anger or sadness. You simply adjust your expectations and future behavior based on updated information about that person's character. Emotions are data, not directives. This rationality doesn't mean suppressing feelings. It means processing them internally before allowing them to influence your actions. You feel everything deeply, but act based on what is strategically intelligent, not on what is emotionally gratifying in the moment. This separation between feeling and acting is what distinguishes leaders from followers. The second characteristic is calculated composure, not cruel aloofness or sadistic indifference, but a steady emotional temperature that doesn't fluctuate based on the whims of the social environment around you. When others are agitated, you remain calm. When others are elated, you remain balanced. When others are desperate, you remain centered. This composure is magnetic because people naturally gravitate towards stability in a world of constant emotional volatility. You become a fixed point around which others orbit. They may not understand your stillness, but they are subconsciously drawn to it because it offers a sense of security they can't generate internally. The third characteristic is the respect you command without demanding. This respect doesn't come from titles, accomplishments, or external validation. It comes from the way you carry yourself in the world, from your refusal to tolerate inappropriate treatment, from your ability to say no without justifying yourself, from your skill in maintaining boundaries without emotional theatrics. People respect what they can't easily manipulate. When you cease to be predictable, you cease to be controllable. When you cease to be controllable, you cease to be disrespected. Respect is a natural byproduct of calculated unpredictability combined with consistency of character. The fourth characteristic is unwavering resolve in the face of provocation. The new you cannot be rattled by insults, manipulated by guilt, or thrown off balance by other people's drama. You've developed a psychological armor that deflects emotional attacks without even registering them as attacks. Not because you're insensitive, but because you understand that the actions of others reveal their character, not yours. This resolve deeply frustrates people who are accustomed to controlling others through emotional manipulation. When their habitual tactics fail with you, they are forced to interact with you on more honest terms or to withdraw completely. Both outcomes are victories for you. The fifth characteristic of the new archetype is absolute selectivity. You don't accept just any company. You carefully choose with whom you spend your time and energy. You don't attend just any event. You select those that add value to your life. You don't maintain just any relationship. You cultivate only those that are mutually beneficial. This selectivity automatically conveys that you consider yourself valuable. When you are selective about whom you spend time with, you are declaring that your time has value. When you are discerning about how you are treated, you are communicating that you deserve quality treatment. When you reject unsuitable offers, you are demonstrating that you have standards. The sixth characteristic is economy of words. The new you speaks less, but every word carries weight. You've eliminated unnecessary explanations, defensive justifications, and idle chatter. When you speak, it's to communicate something important or strategic. When you remain silent, it's by choice, not from a lack of anything to say. This verbal economy forces others to pay attention when you speak. They learn that your words have significance because you don't waste them on trivialities. Your silence becomes as powerful as your speech because both are conscious choices, not automatic reactions. The seventh characteristic is complete emotional autonomy. You don't need external validation to feel good about yourself. You don't need constant attention to feel important. You don't need the approval of others to make decisions. You've become emotionally self-sufficient, capable of generating internally everything you once begged for externally. That autonomy is terrifying for individuals who rely on codependency to maintain their relationships. They are at a loss on how to interact with someone who doesn't require them to feel complete. It compels a completely new dynamic where they need to offer genuine value instead of simply exploiting emotional needs. The eighth characteristic is strategic predictability coupled with tactical unpredictability. You are consistent in your values and principles. People know what to expect from you in terms of character and integrity, but you are unpredictable in your specific reactions to situations. They can never quite anticipate how you will respond to a particular provocation or request. This combination creates a unique form of psychological tension where others feel secure about your overall reliability, but insecure about your specific availability. They know you are a person of your word, but they don't know if they will have access to you whenever they desire. The ninth characteristic is genuine indifference to outcomes you cannot control. You invest fully in what is within your control, your actions, attitudes, and decisions, but you remain completely detached from results that hinge on the choices of other individuals. This detachment isn't feigned or forced. It's a profound understanding of where your responsibility ends and others begins. The 10th and most potent characteristic is the ability to strategically vanish. When your presence isn't appreciated, you simply remove yourself from the equation without drama, explanations, or threats. You understand that your absence can communicate your worth more effectively than your presence ever could. This vanishing act isn't a cowardly escape or emotional manipulation. It's a strategic retreat based on a rational assessment of the situation. When the environment isn't conducive to your growth or well-being, you simply find one that is, without sentimentality about what you're leaving behind. This archetypal transformation doesn't happen overnight, but each day you postpone its implementation. Is another day spent living as a victim of circumstances instead of the architect of your own destiny. Becoming the architect of your own destiny requires mastering the psychological tools that govern govern human interactions. These aren't malicious manipulations, but defensive strategies that shield you from being exploited while establishing your position of strength in any social dynamic. True power operates in the shadows through subtle actions that shape perceptions, without people realizing they are being influenced. The first Machiavellian strategy is temporal control. You cease responding to messages instantaneously, not out of arrogance, but to re-establish the value of your time. When someone sends you a message, you read it, process it, and respond when it's convenient for you, not when it's convenient for them. This simple shift completely restructures the power dynamic. Implement strategic delays. Casual messages receive a response in 2 to 4 hours. Messages from people who have historically disrespected you receive a response in 24 to 48 hours. Last minute. Invitations don't receive a response until you've had time to evaluate whether they are worth your time. This isn't a childish game. It's non-verbal communication that your time is valuable. The second strategy is the economy of availability. You cease being available whenever someone needs you. When someone asks if you can help with something, your standard response becomes, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you." Even if you have nothing planned, this phrase communicates that your life has priorities that don't include being constantly at their beck and call. Develop the habit of saying, "I can't today, but I can on Thursday at 3 p.m. instead of simply yes. Sure, this specificity communicates that you have control over your schedule and that others need to adapt to your availability, not the other way around. Gradually, people learn that access to you requires planning, not improvisation. The third Machiavellian strategy is energy modulation. You cease demonstrating excessive enthusiasm for anything related to other individuals. When someone shares good news, you respond with, "That's good," instead of, "That's amazing, I'm so happy for you." When someone invites you to something, you respond with, "I'll consider it," instead of, "I'd love to go." This modulation isn't cruel coldness, it's strategic emotional regulation. Excessive enthusiasm communicates neediness and emotional reliance. Measured interest communicates that you have your own sources of fulfillment and that the lives of others, while interesting, aren't the center of your emotional universe. The fourth strategy involves multiplying your perceived options. Stop behaving as if each person or opportunity is unique and irreplaceable. When someone cancels a date, your reply is, "No problem, I had other plans for today anyway." If someone rejects you for something, you respond with, "I understand, I was already considering other avenues." These statements, whether entirely truthful or not, convey that your happiness or success isn't contingent on any single individual or circumstance. Even if you're internally disappointed, you outwardly project the image of someone who always has alternatives. People place greater value on those who can explore other possibilities. The fifth Machiavellian strategy is the reversal of need. Instead of showing that you need them, subtly make them realize they need you. Stop offering assistance, wait to be asked. Stop giving unsolicited advice. Stop trying to fix problems that aren't yours. When someone approaches you with an issue, listen, but conclude with, "I'm sure you'll figure out a solution." This reversal compels people to acknowledge, consciously or unconsciously, that you offer something valuable that isn't always readily available. They start to cherish the moments when you choose to invest your energy in them because they understand it's a choice, not a necessity on your part. The sixth strategy is calibrated emotional mirroring. You mirror the level of emotional investment you receive, never exceeding it. If someone treats you with indifference, you respond with polite indifference. If someone demonstrates genuine interest, you reciprocate with proportional interest. If someone is warm, you are cordial, but never warmer than they are. This mirroring eliminates the imbalance that characterized your previous relationships. You stop being the only one investing emotionally while the other remains distant. When you equalize the level of investment, you force the other person to increase theirs if they want more from you, or it reveals they were never truly interested. The seventh Machiavellian strategy is creating information gaps. You stop sharing unnecessary details about your life, plans, and thoughts. When someone asks what you did on the weekend, instead of a detailed narrative, you reply, "It was productive," or "I enjoyed it." When they inquire about your plans, you respond, "I have a few things in mind." These gaps naturally spark curiosity. People become intrigued by what they don't fully know. Mystery generates interest in a way that complete transparency never can. You become someone they want to understand better, rather than someone they already know completely and have lost interest in. The eighth strategy is the strategic withdrawal of attention. When someone mistreats you, instead of confronting them or explaining how you feel, you simply and gradually reduce the attention you give that person. Fewer conversations, shorter replies, less initiative to connect. No drama, no explanations, no ultimatums, just a natural decline in your presence in their life. This withdrawal is more effective than any confrontation because it forces the person to notice your absence without you appearing to be dramatic. They begin to wonder why you're more distant, leading them to reflect on their own behaviors. Often this results in behavioral change without you needing to say a word. The ninth Machiavellian strategy is intermittent reinforcement of attention. Occasionally, you offer moments of concentrated, high-quality attention, but in an unpredictable manner. One day you might have a deep conversation with someone, but then revert to a pattern of superficial interactions for weeks. This unpredictability creates an addictive dynamic where people intensely value the moments of complete attention they receive. This pattern works because the human brain is wired to seek intermittent rewards more intensely than constant rewards. It's the same principle that makes gambling addictive. The uncertainty about when the next reward will come keeps the interest high. The 10th strategy is demonstrating indifference to specific outcomes. When you want something from someone, you present your request once clearly and then never mention it again. If the person doesn't respond or refuses, you simply move on with your life without insisting, questioning, or showing frustration. This apparent indifference to specific outcomes conveys that you have other options and aren't dependent on this specific person's cooperation. The 11th Machiavellian strategy is the selective amplification of your presence. Occasionally, you allow yourself to shine, sharing a significant accomplishment, showcasing an impressive skill, or recounting an engaging story. But these moments are rare and strategic, creating a contrast with your habitually reserved demeanor. When you choose to stand out, the impact is amplified because people aren't accustomed to you seeking attention. These strategies work in concert to forge a magnetic presence that attracts rather than pursues, that intrigues instead of explaining, that dominates through calculated absence rather than desperate presence. Implemented consistently, they will fundamentally transform how others perceive and respond to you. And this requires mastering the most sophisticated art in the Machiavellian arsenal, calculated indifference. This isn't the indifference of the defeated who have given up, nor the coldness of the resentful who have been hurt. It's the indifference of the powerful who have realized that their peace of mind cannot hinge on the actions or approval of others. True indifference is a form of social control because it removes you from the emotional equation that others attempt to create. When someone provokes you expecting a reaction and you remain genuinely indifferent, it completely disarms their strategy. They become confused, frustrated, and eventually are forced to change tactics or withdraw. Both outcomes serve your interests. The first tier of applied indifference is indifference to approval. You cease modifying your behavior based on what others might think. You make decisions based on what is best for you, not on what will generate social validation. When someone critiques your choices, you receive the criticism with a simple "I understand your perspective" and proceed exactly as you planned before. This indifference to approval is liberating because it eliminates the exhausting need to constantly calculate how your actions will be perceived. You stop living like an actor, trying to please an invisible audience, and begin living as the director of your own life. People perceive this shift intuitively and start to respect you more because you clearly respect yourself. The second tier is indifference to provocation. When someone tries to irritate, humiliate, or elicit an emotional response from you, you respond with the same energy you would to a comment about the weather, not because you didn't hear or understand, but because you have consciously chosen not to allow another person's words to alter your emotional state. Practice this standard response to provocations. Interesting perspective, followed by a change of subject or complete silence. This response frustrates instigators because it offers no fuel for escalation. They can't emotionally hook you, so they quickly lose interest. Your composure in the face of their aggression makes them appear childish by contrast. The third tier of strategic indifference is indifference to specific relationship outcomes. You stop trying to control how others feel about you or how they respond to your actions. You offer your best self consistently, but remain detached about whether it will be appreciated, ignored, or rejected. This detachment paradoxically makes you more appealing because it eliminates the needy energy that repels people. When you genuinely don't care if someone specific likes you, it manifests in your body language, tone of voice, and behavioral choices. You stop trying to impress and simply exist authentically. This authenticity without the need for validation is magnetic because it's rare. Most people are constantly performing for some audience. The fourth tier is indifference to attempts at emotional manipulation. When someone tries to use guilt, emotional blackmail, or victimhood to control your behavior, you remain completely immune. You recognize the tactic for what it is, an attempt at manipulation, and don't allow it to affect your decisions. Your standard response becomes, "I understand that you're upset, but my decision remains the same." This immunity to emotional manipulation forces manipulative individuals to interact with you honestly or to withdraw. They quickly learn that their usual tactics don't work on you, which compels them to find other ways to get what they want or to seek out more vulnerable targets. The fifth tier of applied indifference is indifference to artificial social hierarchies. You treat important people and ordinary people with the exact same level of basic respect and interest. You aren't intimidated by status, titles, or wealth, nor do you look down on those who lack them. This equality of treatment confuses people accustomed to being treated differently based on their social standing. When you're unfazed by external status symbols, it signals that you possess genuine self-assurance. People with true status, not just superficial displays, respect this confidence. Individuals with artificial status feel uneasy because they rely on external validation to feel important. The sixth tier is indifference to gossip and social drama. When someone approaches you to share rumors about others or attempts to involve you in conflicts that aren't your concern, you respond with conspicuous disinterest. A simple followed by a change of subject or I don't have an opinion on that become your standard replies. This detachment from drama gradually removes you from webs of gossip and conflict. People who thrive on drama quickly realize that you're not a dependable source of emotional engagement for their stories. They stop seeking you out with these matters, which significantly enhances the quality of your social interactions. You become known as someone who is above social trivialities. The seventh level of strategic indifference is detachment from attempts to impress you. When someone is clearly trying to impress you with accomplishments, possessions, or connections, you respond with polite but measured interest. That's interesting becomes your go-to response, regardless of how objectively impressive the attempt might be. This indifference to attempts to impress you conveys that you are not easily swayed, which paradoxically motivates people to work harder to earn your approval. They begin to view your approval as something valuable, precisely because it's difficult to obtain. The eighth level is indifference to invitations and opportunities that don't add value to your life. You stop accepting invitations simply out of politeness or fear of causing offense. When someone invites you to something you genuinely don't want to do, you politely decline without providing elaborate justifications. Thank you for the invitation, but I won't be able to attend becomes sufficient. This social selectivity communicates that your time is valuable and that you have standards for how you spend it. People begin to value your presence more because they know that when you choose to be somewhere, it's because you genuinely want to be there, not out of social obligation. The ninth level of applied indifference is indifference to explaining your decisions or behaviors. When someone questions your choices, you don't feel compelled to justify or defend your decisions. It's what works for me, or simply, it was my choice, become adequate answers. You understand that people who deserve explanations already have them, and people who don't deserve them won't receive them. This refusal to constantly explain yourself forces others to accept that you are an autonomous individual with the right to make decisions without external approval or understanding. Gradually, they stop questioning your choices because they learn that they won't receive the detailed explanations they might use to argue or manipulate. The 10th and most advanced level is strategic indifference to your own social image. You stop constantly monitoring how you are being perceived and stop trying to control narratives about you. If someone speaks ill of you, you don't defend yourself or attempt to correct misunderstandings. You understand that people who genuinely know you won't believe slander, and people who believe it never truly knew you. This indifference to your social reputation is perhaps the most challenging to achieve, but also the most liberating. When you genuinely don't care what people who don't matter think about you, you become invulnerable to one of the most common forms of social control, the threat to your status or reputation. Indifference, when applied strategically and consistently, doesn't make you a cold or cruel person. It makes you a centered, balanced, and genuinely powerful individual. Others gravitate toward you because your indifference communicates an inner strength that they desire to be around, even if they don't fully comprehend its origin. But this strength is only sustained when you completely master your reactive impulses. The difference between appearing powerful and being genuinely powerful lies in absolute control over your automatic reactions. Reactive people are predictable. Predictable people are controllable. Controllable people never command true respect. Your reactive instincts have been programmed over years of emotional conditioning. Each time someone provoked you and you reacted defensively, you reinforced a neural pathway that associates provocation with immediate emotional response. Each time you explained yourself when criticized, you strengthened the belief that criticisms require defenses. Each time you reacted with anger to disrespect, you taught your brain that disrespect is an emergency that demands immediate reaction. Breaking free from these patterns demands conscious and deliberate reprogramming. It doesn't stem from willpower or fleeting emotional decisions. It arises from forging new neural pathways that gradually supplant the old ones. It's a technical process, not an emotional one. The initial stride in mastering your reactive instincts involves establishing a temporal gap between stimulus and response. When someone utters something that would typically trigger an immediate reaction, you introduce a 3-second pause before any reply. During these 3 seconds, you pose 2 questions. Does this situation truly warrant my emotional investment? And which response best serves my long-term interests? This simple pause disrupts the automaticity of reactivity. During these 3 seconds, your rational mind has an opportunity to assess the situation before your emotional mind seizes control. Gradually, this pause becomes second nature, and you cultivate the ability to consciously consciously select your responses instead of reacting instinctively. The second element is training your mind to interpret provocations as information about the provoker, rather than personal affronts. When someone attempts to belittle, insult, or provoke you, instead of processing it as "this person is attacking me," you process it as "this person is revealing their own insecurity, frustration, limitation." This reinterpretation eliminates the emotional urge to defend yourself because you don't perceive yourself as being under attack. Practice this shift in perspective mentally. When someone behaves disrespectfully, instead of thinking, "How dare they treat me this way?" think, "Interesting. This person is clearly grappling with internal issues that compel them to act this way." This change in focus removes you from the emotional equation and allows you to respond or not respond based on strategy, not wounded pride. The third component is cultivating genuine indifference to opinions that lack significance. You create a clear mental roster of individuals whose opinions hold weight in your life, likely no more than 5 to 10 people whom you genuinely respect and whose judgment you value. Opinions from anyone outside this roster automatically become inconsequential, regardless of how they are expressed. When someone outside this list criticizes, insults, or tries to diminish you, your internal response mirrors that of a 5-year-old attempting to elucidate quantum physics. You don't become offended or defensive. You simply recognize that the source lacks the credibility to warrant emotional investment. This genuine indifference is evident in your body language and tone of voice, deterring future provocations. The fourth element in mastering reactive instincts is rehearsing standard responses for common provocative scenarios. Instead of improvising emotional responses in the moment, you develop an arsenal of calculated replies for different types of provocation. For direct insults, silence, followed by a change of subject. For manipulation attempts, interesting perspective, followed by indifference. For needless drama, "I don't have the bandwidth for this," followed by physical withdrawal. These standardized responses eliminate the need to decide how to react at the moment of provocation. You've already decided in advance when you were in a calm, rational state of mind. During the provocation, you simply implement the pre-planned response without internal debate or emotional hesitation. The fifth component is fostering an identity that cannot be threatened by external actions. Your self-image becomes so robust and grounded in internal realities, your values, achievements, character, that external attacks fail to shake it. When someone tries to diminish you, it's akin to them trying to convince you that water isn't wet. You simply know they are wrong without the need for debate. This internal fortitude stems from genuine awareness of your own values and accomplishments. You maintain a clear mental catalog of your authentic qualities, not based on comparisons with others or external validation, but on an objective assessment of your capabilities and character. When this list is solid and based in reality, external attacks become irrelevant. The sixth element is training your physiology to remain composed during provocations. Emotional reactions aren't solely mental, they are physical. When provoked, your heart rate increases, muscles tense, and breathing quickens. These physical cues fuel the emotional reaction, creating a cycle of escalation. Disrupting this cycle physically disrupts the emotional cycle. Practice controlled breathing techniques that you can implement discreetly when triggered. Slow, deep breaths, inhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 4, exhaling for 6. Activate your parasympathetic nervous system, automatically reducing your stress response. When your body remains composed, your mind stays sharp. The seventh key to mastering reactivity is reframing conflicts as opportunities to showcase your superiority through self-mastery. Instead of perceiving provocations as attacks that must be defended against, you view them as chances to demonstrate that you operate on a higher plane than the instigator. Each time you remain calm while another loses their cool, you publicly display who possesses greater inner strength. This reinterpretation transforms provocations from threats into gifts. The more aggressive the provocation, the greater the opportunity to exhibit your dominance through the contrast between your composure and the other person's lack of it. Observers are always more impressed by those who maintain their dignity under pressure than by those who shout the loudest. The eighth element is developing the capacity to disengage completely from toxic situations without explanation or theatrics. When you recognize that an interaction isn't worth your energy, you simply exit physically or emotionally. You don't announce your departure, you don't explain your reasons, you don't issue threats or ultimatums. You simply cease to participate. This capacity for silent disengagement is one of the most potent tools in your arsenal because it completely eliminates the possibility of escalation. You cannot be dragged down to another person's level if you refuse to play their game. Your absence communicates your disapproval more effectively than any verbal confrontation could. The ninth key is cultivating a long-term perspective that renders momentary provocations insignificant. You develop the habit of asking yourself, will this matter in a week, in a month, in a year? The answer is almost invariably no. This temporal perspective automatically diminishes the emotional importance of minor conflicts. crises. When you operate with a long-term outlook, petty squabbles and trivial provocations become patently unimportant. You don't have the time or energy to squander on fleeting dramas because you are focused on building something lasting. This focus on the long game is apparent in your equanimity during momentary crises. The 10th and most advanced key is developing genuine gratitude for provocations because they reveal the true nature of the people around you. Instead of becoming upset when someone displays their authentic self through toxic behavior, you are grateful for the information. It's far better to discover someone's true character through a minor provocation than through a major betrayal down the line. This gratitude for revelations of character completely eliminates the bitterness and resentment that typically accompany conflicts. You begin to view toxic individuals as unwitting teachers who impart valuable lessons about human nature. This perspective transforms every negative experience into personal growth. Mastering your reactive instincts does not mean suppressing emotions or becoming robotic. It means consciously choosing when, how, and whether you will express your emotions based on what serves your interests, not on what satisfies your momentary impulses. When you consciously choose to express emotions based on strategy, not on impulse, it prepares you for the ultimate test of your transformation, remaining unshakable when the world around you is collapsing. Strategic persistence isn't just about weathering storms, it's about using the chaos as fuel to further solidify your position of strength. Chaos is inevitable. Relationships will crumble, people will disappoint you, plans will fail, crises will arise. The difference between those who emerge stronger and those who are destroyed lies not in the absence of problems, but in the response to problems. Your true strength is not measured by the ease of your days, but by your ability to maintain direction when everything around you is losing its way. The first principle of strategic persistence is to accept that chaos is information, not punishment. When your life descends into turmoil, your first reaction should be investigative, not emotional. Every crisis reveals something important about the structures you have built, the people you have chosen, or the strategies you have implemented. Chaos is the ultimate test that exposes weaknesses before they become catastrophic failures. During periods of instability, implement a routine of cold analysis. Every day, dedicate time to objectively assess what is succeeding and what is not. Which relationships are proving resilient and which are crumbling? Which strategies are withstanding the pressure and which are failing? Which aspects of your personality are growing stronger under duress and which are being exposed as weaknesses? This systematic assessment transforms the chaos of overwhelming emotional experience into useful data for strategic adjustments. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become a pattern researcher. Every problem becomes a lesson. Every setback becomes information for future optimization. The second principle is to maintain your standards precisely when it would be easiest to lower them. During crises, the natural temptation is to accept anything, any relationship, any opportunity, any solution that offers temporary respite. This is the trap that destroys most people. They trade their principles for fleeting stability. You do the opposite. When your life is in turmoil, you become even more selective, not less. When you are emotionally vulnerable, you implement even more rigorous criteria for the people and opportunities you allow into your life. When you are under pressure, you become even more unwavering about your core values. This upholding of standards during crises communicates something powerful, that your integrity is not for sale, even when you are in need. People observe how you act under strain, and those who maintain dignity during hardship command profound respect. Your refusal to compromise standards when it would be convenient to do so establishes you as someone of genuine character. The third principle of strategic persistence is to use isolation as an opportunity for fortification, not as a punishment. When relationships deteriorate and you find yourself more alone, instead of panicking or desperately trying to rebuild toxic connections, you embrace solitude as a period of internal reconstruction. Solitude forced by chaos is different from solitude chosen by strategy, but both can be equally productive. During periods of involuntary isolation, you invest heavily in yourself, reading, training, creating, planning. You use the time you previously spent maintaining dysfunctional relationships to build capabilities that will make you more attractive to functional relationships in the future. This transformation of isolation into self-investment means that you emerge from crises stronger than you entered. While others exit storms worn down and diminished, you emerge refined and expanded. Your ability to use adversity as fuel for growth makes you virtually invincible over time. The fourth principle is to maintain routines that preserve your inner stability, regardless of the external chaos. Your daily practices, exercise, reading, reflection, planning, become even more crucial during turbulence, not less. When everything around you is shifting unpredictably, your routines become anchors that keep you centered. Develop rituals that you can maintain even in the worst circumstances. Exercises that can be done anywhere. Reflection practices that require only a few minutes. Planning habits that work even when you have no control over external variables. These These routines become your bedrock of inner power that remains constant even when outside variables are chaotic. The fifth principle of strategic persistence is to interpret attacks and betrayals as purification processes, not as personal defeats. When people you trusted betray you, when relationships you valued prove false, when emotional investments you made turn out to be wasted, you reinterpret these experiences as necessary cleansing. Every betrayal removes a person who did not deserve your trust. Every relationship that fails eliminates a dynamic that was draining your energy. Every wasted emotional investment frees up resources that can be directed toward more deserving opportunities. Chaos is often the process by which life removes elements that no longer serve your growth. The sixth principle is to use pain as fuel for transformation, not as an excuse for regression. When you experience profound disappointment, significant betrayal, or substantial loss, you channel the resulting emotional energy into accelerating your personal development. Intense pain can be converted into intense resolve if you direct the energy appropriately. Instead of using suffering as a reason to lower your standards, accept substandard treatment, or revert to destructive patterns, you harness the intensity of the pain to break through internal resistances that would normally limit your growth. Periods of intense pain can yield periods of accelerated growth if you're willing to use the suffering as a catalyst. The seventh tenet of strategic persistence is maintaining a long-term perspective when short-term pressures try to compel you to make impulsive decisions. During crises, the pressure to solve problems immediately can lead to choices that undermine long-term goals. You withstand this pressure by keeping your focus on where you want to be in 5 years, not on how to feel better today. Decisions made under emotional duress rarely serve your best long-term interests. When you are under stress, implement a waiting rule. Important decisions should be postponed until you can assess them with a clear mind. This discipline of delaying decisions until you can think them through strategically shields you from choices that might offer temporary relief at the cost of permanent progress. The eighth principle is cultivating genuine gratitude for crises because they accelerate processes that would take years to unfold naturally. Chaos forces you to confront truths about yourself and others that you might avoid indefinitely during periods of stability. Crises compress years of learning into months of intense experience. Without external pressure, it could take decades for you to discover who the people in your life truly are, what your own real limitations are, and where your true strengths and weaknesses lie. Chaos expedites these discoveries, enabling you to make adjustments and optimizations that might otherwise never happen. The ninth principle of strategic persistence is to use your stability during chaos as a magnet to attract quality people. When everyone around you is losing control, your composure becomes magnetic. People naturally gravitate toward those who maintain stability during turbulence. Your strength during adversity attracts precisely the kind of people you want in your life. This attraction isn't accidental, it's strategic. People who maintain composure during crises are rare and valuable. When you demonstrate this quality consistently, you automatically become appealing to others who value stability and strength. Chaos becomes a natural selection opportunity where you attract people who are compatible with your level of development. The 10th principle is to emerge from each crisis with fewer dependencies and greater autonomy than when you entered. Every storm you weather should diminish your need for external validation, social approval, or emotional support from others. You leverage adversity to fortify your capacity to be complete, irrespective of external circumstances. This growing autonomy doesn't signify isolation. It means you choose connections based on mutual desire, not mutual need. When you don't require others for your emotional equilibrium, you can relate to them from a position of strength, not of neediness. This independence is appealing and fosters healthier, more balanced relationships. Strategic persistence transforms you from someone who survives crises into someone who thrives through them. Each storm leaves you stronger, wiser, and more magnetic. Eventually, you cultivate a reputation for being someone who can be relied upon to maintain fortitude when others crumble. But this reputation is merely the inception of your new reality. What you've constructed through these 9 steps isn't simply a stronger personality. It's a completely revamped identity that operates according to different laws than those that govern the existence of most people. You now comprehend that the person who commenced this journey, the one who checked their phone desperately, who accepted crumbs of attention, who compulsively over-explained themselves, wasn't truly you. It was a facade crafted by years of social conditioning, fear of rejection, and a fundamental misunderstanding of how power truly operates. That mask has been systematically dismantled, piece by piece, until only your authentic essence remained. The transformation you've undergone cannot be undone. Like a snake that has shed its skin, you cannot revert to the previous version of yourself because it simply no longer exists. The neural pathways that generated needy behaviors have been replaced by pathways that generate powerful behaviors. Your perception of human relationships has been permanently altered by a Machiavellian understanding of human nature. Look around around you now and observe how your presence impacts the environment. People react to you in a different way. They pause before making needless requests. They contemplate their words more carefully before speaking. They exhibit greater respect in their interactions. This shift hasn't occurred because you've become aggressive or unkind. It's happened because you've become undeniably valuable. Genuine worth cannot be feigned or forced. It naturally emanates from someone who has mastered the art of being sufficient unto themselves. When you don't require the approval, attention, or validation of others to feel complete, that self-sufficiency becomes magnetic. People can sense the disparity between someone who desires their company and someone who requires it. They invariably prefer the former. Your new persona operates according to 3 immutable laws that you've thoroughly internalized. First law, you never chase, you attract. Second law, you never explain, you demonstrate. Third law, you never beg, you select. These laws aren't strategies you consciously apply. They've evolved into your fundamental nature. When you encounter individuals who still function according to the old patterns, pursuing approval, compulsively explaining themselves, pleading for attention, you experience a blend of understanding and detachment. You comprehend where they are because you were once there. However, you cannot revert to that mindset because it has become fundamentally incompatible with who you are now. This incompatibility fosters a natural selection in your social life. People operating at lower levels of emotional development naturally drift away from you because they can't manipulate, control, or exploit you. Individuals functioning at higher levels naturally gravitate toward you because they recognize in you someone who can interact as an equal, not as a dependent. The silence you've cultivated isn't merely an absence of words, it's a presence of power. When you enter a room and feel no compulsion to fill the space with unnecessary chatter, you occupy that space differently. Others perceive that you are comfortable with yourself, that you don't require constant validation, that you possess sufficient substance to exist without external bolstering. That quality, the capacity to exist wholly within oneself, is so rare that it becomes automatically alluring. The majority of individuals exist in a perpetual state of lack, constantly seeking something outside themselves to feel whole. When they encounter someone who clearly doesn't require anything external to feel complete, it sparks curiosity, respect, and inevitably a desire for closeness. But here's the ultimate paradox you now inhabit. The less you need others, the more they crave to be near you. The less you seek attention, the more attention you garner. The less you concern yourself with social approval, the more approval you receive. This complete reversal of social dynamics is the direct consequence of having mastered the emotional calculus that governs human interactions. You've discovered that true power doesn't reside in getting others to do what you want. It lies in not needing them to do anything. When your peace of mind, self-worth, and personal fulfillment are generated, internally, you become invulnerable to external manipulation. And people who cannot manipulate you are compelled to respect you. The fear you once harbored, that your absence would go unnoticed, that your silence would reveal that you were never needed, has proven utterly unfounded. Your absence wasn't merely noticed. It created a void that others felt profoundly. Those who disregarded you when you were available suddenly became aware of your absence when you became scarce. But more significant than the reaction of others is the internal transformation you've undergone. You no longer require external validation to know your worth because you know it intimately. You no longer need constant attention to feel significant because you've cultivated an internal source of significance. You no longer require the approval of others to make decisions because you've developed unwavering confidence in your own judgment. This emotional self-reliance is your greatest accomplishment because it's enduring and inviolable. Relationships may dissolve, opportunities may vanish, circumstances may shift, but your capacity to generate fulfillment, purpose, and value internally remains constant. You've become a source, not a drain. The person you are now isn't an enhanced version of who you were. It's an entirely different kind of human being. You operate according to principles that most people don't grasp and cannot replicate because it demands a degree of self-discipline and psychological insight that few are willing to cultivate. Now you see clearly that your previous existence wasn't life at all. It was emotional survival masquerading as relationships. You mistook dependency for love, neediness for passion, availability for loyalty. These confusions kept you ensnared in cycles of humiliation that you romanticized as virtues. The freedom you feel now isn't just an absence of emotional dependence. It's the presence of absolute personal power. You select your interactions based on what adds value to your existence, not on what fills emotional voids. You offer your energy to those who deserve it, not to those who demand it. You cultivate relationships founded on mutual admiration, not on mutual necessity. This is your new reality. You have become the type of person you always yearned to attract. Strong, centered, worthy, selective, powerful. And because you have become this person, you naturally draw others who share these attributes. Your life becomes a network of connections built on strength, not on frailty. The ultimate command is, Simple but absolute. Never return. Never allow nostalgia, temporary loneliness, or social pressure to persuade you to revert to old patterns. Never accept crumbs when you know you deserve the feast. Never explain decisions to people who don't warrant explanations. Never chase those who should be pursuing you. You now possess something that cannot be taken away, bought, or imitated. Genuine dignity born from profound self-awareness and relentless self-discipline. Employ this dignity to craft a life that mirrors your true worth, not the limitations that others attempted to impose upon you. The transformation is complete. You are no longer who you were. You are who you always had the potential to be. If you've made it this far, you've already demonstrated something most people lack: the courage to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself and the determination to implement real change. This journey of transformation you've just experienced is only the beginning. Each day that you apply these principles, you will distance yourself further from the needy version you were and move closer to the empowered version you are becoming. Remember, you cannot revert to who you were because that person no longer exists. From today forward, you operate under different laws. You attract instead of pursue. You demonstrate instead of explain. You select instead of beg. If this content resonated with you as it should, leave a like so that more people can access this transformation. Subscribe to continue receiving content that challenges you to grow, not that fuels your comfortable illusions. And in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. I want to know where the people are who have enough courage to face reality and truly transform themselves. The choice is now yours. Continue being who you always were or become who you always had the potential to be.